Welcome to the second part of Chapter 2. In this part, we will talk about various aspects of an organization, and understanding those aspects will also help you to understand organizations in general, but more specifically, how organizations impact project management. Now, there are different ways to explain an organization. In fact, organizational science is a very powerful subfield of management. So, some people get degrees in organizational behavior, in organizational science. So it's a vast topic. So here we just have like a glimpse on some of the main ideas in organizational science. Now, an organization can be viewed as a collection of several frames. Those frames, can be, this term frame can be defined as an aspect of an organization, and all those frames are typically present, and you need to understand all of those frames. Now, the first frame is the so-called formal structural frame. It focuses on the roles and responsibilities within the organization, coordination of work, control within the organization. Typically, organizations create like a chart, an organization chart that help them define that frame. Basically, it's all about defining different positions or roles within the organization, how those roles are related, who is above which role, which role is supervised by which role, and so forth. Okay, so that's the formal structural frame. Now, at the same time, you understand that no matter what kind of official formal frame you have, there are always people who occupy positions within those formal roles, right? And people, unlike those formal positions, they're not formal. I mean, humans are not always rational. So they bring in their beliefs, their values, their personalities, their rationality to those positions. So specific people influence things, right? And just like if you're talking about if you're talking about a president of a country, let's say president of the United States. Now, this role is governed by constitution, perhaps by numerous other laws and bills, right? But nevertheless, you know that personality of a president plays a big role in how the country is managed. And then you have political frame. A political frame means those people within those formal roles, sometimes they form links, relationships, coalitions comprised of various individuals, and typically those coalitions, those groupings of people is done based on some kind of common goal. Let's say there is a common goal among those team organizational members to replace the CEO, right? And unofficially they will form this political coalition. So political frames are different from structural frames because structural frames are official, right? Those official lines of authority and responsibility. Political frames can go against those official lines, right? For example, two people are in units that are supposed to supervise, control each other. For example, accounting department is supposed to control R&D department, but nevertheless, one person in accounting department and one person in the research and development department, they form an official coalition so that accounting department will close their eyes on some of the extra expenses within R&D made by that specific person. So that's what political frame is all about, those unofficial links and groupings and coalitions among people. Now, the fourth frame is sometimes the hardest to detect, and again, it depends on the person who is looking at it. Some people have a very good sense for those symbolic characteristics. I think it's linked to emotional intelligence. They are able to understand those clues that are not necessarily obvious to an average person. So, symbolic frame focuses on symbols and meanings related to events. Culture is important. Let me give you like one example of something that characterizes symbolic frame. For example, when you walk into somebody's office, right? From the way that office looks, you can tell how powerful this person is within the organization, because his or her office is a symbol of this person's power, right? So a senior executive would have a spacious, well decorated office. Typically, he or she will have a window that is facing the outside, right? And then somebody who is a junior employee will have a small cubicle, and this cubicle may be located in a place that doesn't necessarily have windows, right? So even from those things, or the cars people drive, right? The kind of cars they drive, you can see who is the boss who has more power. So some of those things, let me give you like an example from my work, something that I always wondered about. I always wondered like why people like sometimes in my organization I saw people being very upset if they don't receive some kind of award, and by award I mean like some kind of sheet of paper, like a certificate or some kind of plaque, that recognizes them for something. And I was like always kind of laughing about it. I was thinking, well, this certificate, it takes 1 minute to print on a printer, right? And it costs what, 5 cents. And people, like some people, yeah, I've seen people who are threatening to resign if they don't receive a particular award and so forth. But of course, that view was naive, because you understand that this certificate, it's not just about this 5 cent paper. It's not that 5 cent paper that is being involved, right? This certificate is a symbol of something much bigger and more important. For example, recognition of this person as being a valuable team member, right? So if he doesn't get that silly sheet of paper, it means that the CEO, the boss, does not recognize him or her as a valuable team member. He doesn't recognize his or her contribution, right? So that's why people are upset. That's why they're fighting, not because of that sheet of paper per se, right? And sometimes you can use this human nature to your advantage, because you know, you can really motivate people. You can boost their motivation and their loyalty to organization by giving those cheap 5 cent certificates, or $1 plaques, or $10 plaques, whatever that is. Sometimes it has as much impact as increasing somebody's salary by 10, 20, 30%, right? Just giving somebody like a sign, a symbol of recognition. So you need to understand those things. And I think that's the highest level, when people are sensitive to those kind of things. Um, so when it comes to this formal structural frame, there are three common forms or common ways of organizing a corporation or any kind of organization. So there are three common organizational structures: the functional form, the project form, and the so-called matrix form. Now, functional form is the traditional way of organizing a corporation. So you have a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, at the top, and then the entire organization is divided into divisions or departments. For example, you have engineering department, you have manufacturing department, you have IT department, you have HR department. And there is a vice president reporting to the CEO in charge of each of those departments. And then each vice president will have his staff: engineering staff, manufacturing staff, and so forth. Okay. And naturally, those vice presidents, they report to the CEO, as you can see from those lines, right? Lines of authority. However, they don't have authority over each other. They're all on the same level. So that's a traditional way. Now, there's another way to organize an organization. So instead of viewing your organization as that stable collection of departments, you view your organization as a fluid project-based entity. So in other words, whenever there is a project, let's say there's a project to produce a new car or a new software product, you assemble a project team for this product A, you assign a manager in charge of that project, and then you let them work as one unit. Once project A is completed, then some of those staff members, they can be reassigned to another project, or they can be reassigned to other teams, right? So it's a more fluid form, meaning you don't have clearly defined departments, and those departments, and instead you have people organized in according to a project that they're working on. Uh, and then this project organization can always change depending on whether one project is completed or whether another project is initiated. I think young entrepreneurial growing startup organization, they have this structure. Like I've heard this anecdote from a lot of early startup from a lot of startups in the early days of the IT industry. Like a lot of the times they were just they didn't have any formal structure. They were growing, like all of those dot coms and other well-known companies like Apple and Amazon. So they were growing. They felt this need to hire more people, but because they were still young organization, they didn't have a solid structure like this one. And in a way, they shouldn't have a solid structure, because they're still maturing, they're still developing. So nobody knows what the structure should be, right? So what they would commonly say: look, we're not hiring people for specific roles. We're just looking for smart people, and then we're going to tell them, well, find your place in the organization, join a particular group, join a particular project wherever you see yourself fit best, right? So that's another philosophy of organizing organizations. But again, as the organization becomes more mature, to eliminate redundancy, to create more order, to cut waste, to minimize costs, you will probably end up with this formal functional structure. Now, there is a compromise. Like some people believe that this functional organizational structure is too rigid, right? And some people believe that project-based organizational structure is too disorganized, too chaotic. So there's a hybrid approach. The hybrid approach is called matrix organization. So what happens is that you have a CEO and you have those traditional departments like engineering, manufacturing, IT, and HR. And then what happens, you initiate projects, right? And when you initiate those projects, you borrow people from all those departments. So for example, for project A, which is a part of one big program, you assign 2 engineers from the engineering department, 1 person from the manufacturing department, and then 3.5 lines IT department, meaning somebody is working part-time. That's where the half comes from. And then somebody from HR is working part-time for this project as well. So they're still a part of their units, of their departments, but they're temporarily assigned to Project A. Once Project A is completed, those individuals go back to their departments and they continue their work, or they wait for an assignment to another project. So this is like a compromise or hybrid between those two forms. Now, depending on how an organization is organized, it may be supportive or not supportive for new projects. For example, functional form is the least supportive for any kind of new project. In fact, there are many situations where somebody's hired to supervise a particular project. Let's say consultant is brought in from a consulting company such as Accenture or McKinsey to implement something. And because this person is brought from outside, formally he doesn't belong to any department, right? So this can be an advantage, because if you don't belong to a particular department, if you don't really report to anyone, then you're in a better position to be objective, to do what is right for the organization, as opposed to trying to please your boss within a particular unit or the overall boss, right? So some organizations like that. But there's also a downside to that, because the downside of being outside of the formal organizational structure is that you don't really have any you don't have any formal influence tools. In other words, you are not supervising anybody, you don't report to anybody, so how can you get things done if you don't have any formal links to people? Like, for example, you'll go to vice president of, let's say you'll go to an engineer and you'll say, look, I'm working on this project, I need help from you. And he will say, look, who the hell are you, right? My boss is the vice president of engineering. If you want something from me, go talk to my boss, right? And then you go to vice president of engineering, and this vice president of engineering looks at you and he thinks, look, my goal is to please the CEO. I don't know who this guy is. He'll be gone in 1 year. Even if I help him out or her out, this person will be gone. So it's not going to be reflected on me, it's not going to be like of any long-term value for me. So I'll find a way to shove this guy away somewhere, right? So that's the problem of being outside of the formal organizational structure. Now, of course, things become a bit easier when you have a matrix organization or project organization, because your project can be easily integrated under a particular program. So in other words, these two types of organizational structures, they're supportive of projects in the first place. A project can be easily integrated, so so when you initiate a new project, you'll say, look, you're reporting to this program manager. This program manager is supported by the CEO. And if you need something from other vice presidents, then this program manager can ask the CEO to influence them, right? So there is a way to fit your project here. There's also a way to fit your project here under a particular program, but sometimes it's hard to fit a new project within this organizational structure. But without making so basically, yeah. So just once again to summarize that, matrix organizations and project organizations, they're more supportive of projects of any kind, be it IT project or any other type of project. But without getting too theoretical or complex, if you're working on a project, you better know what the formal organizational lines are, right? So you don't jump over people's head. You know who to go to if you want to influence a particular staff member. So, for example, if you want to get something from somebody in manufacturing, then don't go to him. Go straight to the vice president to make sure you have his or her approval before you approach actual staff members. So you need to have an understanding of those organizational lines. Who is the boss? Who is the most important guy or lady? Who can get the job done for you? Who can force people to help you, right? If you don't understand that, then you're not going to be very successful with your project. Now, it has been argued over and over again that organizational culture is something that is very important and something that influences everything, including projects that are carried out within its organization. So what is an organizational culture? It's a set of shared assumptions, values, and behaviors that characterize the functioning of an organization, meaning it's something that people collectively believe in. It's something that people do, the kind of behaviors that they share, the kind of behaviors that they encourage, and so forth. Now, the culture is embedded in people's heads, so sometimes it's hard to see it. And you probably know that if I have a theory about traveling. If you go to a different country, you will, I see tourists all the time. They go to an exotic country and they stay there for 1 or 2 weeks. And when they stay there, they stay like in one of those international hotels like Hilton or something along those lines. And when they stay in this international hotel, which is the same as any other Hilton across the globe, they don't interact with locals. They chat with other tourists, right? So if you are traveling like that, there is no way you will understand the culture of that country, really. My theory is this: in order for you to really understand to understand the culture of a particular country, you really need to spend there at least 1 year, in my opinion, at least 1 year. And you need to spend this 1 year not as an expatriate living in a hotel in isolation from everybody else. You really need to live as a common person. Like you need to rent an apartment in a building where other locals live. You need to commute to work using public transportation. You need to go to several government branches to get some paperwork done. Only then you will start to understand what their culture is all about, right? So it's hard to understand. It takes time. It takes a lot of insight. It takes some talent, right? It takes some emotional intelligence to understand somebody's culture. And many experts believe that the underlying cause of many companies' problems, including failure of projects, is not the structure, is not technology, it's their culture, right? It's something that's hard to understand and hard to change. A lot of the times people argue it's much easier to update, remodel a building than update people's culture, to change the way they think or the things that they believe in, right? Um, and from a political standpoint, we know that when you somehow step on people's culture, on their belief, on their religion, that can result not only in resistance, I mean, it can result in outright war, right? So it's something that's very hard to deal with sometimes. So nevertheless, although culture, organizational culture is something that is very intangible, something that is very fluid, hard to understand, researchers have identified the following dimensions that can characterize an organizational culture. For example, member identity. Do people identify themselves with their profession, with their own personality, or they strongly identify themselves with the organization? In other words, are they proud to be a member of a particular organization? Let's say Microsoft, right? Group emphasis. Are people within the organization loners? They try to do things on their own, or it's a tradition, it's a culture to collaborate, to get other people involved, to get their expertise, to get things done together. People focus. Are you focused on getting things done, or you're focused on people? In other words, if an organization can get something done, but by doing that they will hurt their own employees, let's say they will end up firing some of their employees, will they prefer to do it or not, or they will cancel the project, right? So that people focus. Are you focused on people, or you're more focused on getting things done? Unit integration. Are units within the organization, are they hostile to each other? Do they compete with each other? Or there's an understanding that they all work for the same organization and they need to get things done as one single unit. Uh, by the way, in the Middle East, the focus always seems to be on people, right? In my opinion, like in the Middle East, the culture is that their interests should come first. So therefore, a lot of decision makers, they're hesitant to take certain courses of actions if this will hurt people, because people come first in their thinking. Unit integration, and then I've noticed that in the Middle East, unit integration seems to be low. People are often afraid to cooperate with other units because they're afraid that somehow they will step outside of their authority area. I mean, they will be somehow reprimanded or punished by their boss. So they're very cautious about that. They will always tell you, well, go to talk to my boss first. Also, the level of control. The level of control means, is your organization well managed? Are there controls in place to see what people are doing? Or it's an anarchy, meaning everybody can do whatever he or she wants to. There are no controls, there's no reporting. By the way, chaos or anarchy does not mean bad. Sometimes it gives more agility to your organization because people can do what is right without being afraid of being punished by the formal rules or the formal authority lines. So it's not necessarily bad having no controls. Risk tolerance. Is your organization conservative? It tries to make little steps so that there are not too many risks involved, or your organization involves entrepreneurship. It rewards risk taking. Another important criteria. And then reward criteria. How do you reward people? Do you reward based on performance? Do you reward based on ethics? Do you reward based on people's focus, meaning you are doing what is right for people, not necessarily what is right for the organization? Conflict tolerance. Does your organization support healthy discussion of various alternatives, or in your organization people are afraid to voice their concerns, to contradict their managers? Means and or orientation. Does your organization have a culture where things have to be done no matter what, or when they look at the means, what it will take to get something done, they would rather cancel, they would rather abandon those goals rather than compromise on, let's say, the integrity of the organization or people. And then open system focus. System focus means, like, is your organization like an open learning system? It can accommodate new team members, it can accommodate new practices, or it's very conservative, very rigid in the sense that newcomers and new ideas, innovations are not welcome. Now, so those all those things that can characterize organizational culture, and the things that are marked with an asterisk, they're typically the ones, those factors, once they're high, they're typically supportive. They're typically conducive to success of a project, so they're important for project managers. Now, also, when you're carrying out IT projects, it's a best practice. I mean, if you see an organization that has a clear IT governance structure, IT governance is a set of rules or policies, and collectively they address the authority and control for key IT activities in organizations, including IT infrastructure, IT use, and project management. So basically, it's a set of rules and policies that explain, okay, how IT infrastructure should be managed, who is in charge of it, who can make purchasing decisions in relation to IT, who needs to approve projects, what kind of authority a project manager has, and so forth. Okay, so it's good to have a formal IT governance framework, because you, as a project manager, when you come in, you will understand how things work, how things need to be done. Who are the people that you need to talk to if you need to get an approval for a certain purchase, or who are the people who are supposed to authorize or approve your project. So it makes things a bit easier for you, as opposed to having no formal IT governance framework, where it's all about based on politics, conversations, opinions, right? So, and overall, not just it's good when an organization not just have a IT governance framework. It's good when they have all kinds of standards and guidelines in relation to their procedures, in relation to their um, I don't know, anything within the organization, like strategic management process, how they deal with customers, how they handle customer complaints, what is the annual performance evaluation procedure, all kinds of aspects of the functioning of that organization. So if you have those standard policies in place, then again, you're in a better position, because you can quickly learn how things work, and you can operate using the rules that are already there within the organization. Especially standards in relation to project management are important. You can enforce those standards by creating simple forms and templates. It can really do wonders. So, for example, in my organization, if you want to get any kind of project approved at the concept stage, you had to use a special Excel sheet where you specify, you basically had to prove how your project will align with the overall goals of the organization. Will it support any of those goals? And also, this template also required you to brainstorm a little bit about cost, what it will take to carry out that project from a financial standpoint. So basically, from day one, by using the template, they force you to think about those things. That we like projects that support our organizational goals. We don't like projects that seem to be irrelevant to our organizational goals. We also need you to think from the concept how much it will cost, right? Because if you don't think about cost, then maybe you're not being thorough with your thinking, right? If because you may end up wasting organizational financial resources. And some organizations, they have like a devoted project management office or center of excellence where all those templates are stored, and all those templates, they help projects and project managers in various areas of the organization. Overall, if an organization is committed to information technology, meaning they believe in IT, they believe that IT is an important function, they believe that the IT function not only is essential to their daily operations, it's also essential to their growth, to their competitive advantage. It also helps them to innovate. Then it will be easier for you to carry out IT projects. However, if you're carrying out an IT project in an organization that seems to have low opinion of IT, some organizations, they think that IT is like a necessary evil, something that you need to put up with. You need to pay money to the IT department because nowadays everybody has computers, but they don't view IT being valuable beyond that. So in that case, then if you initiate an IT project, they will not support you within the organization. They will think that you're just wasting money, that IT is expensive already. So you can get a sense, in the very beginning, whether your organization is IT supportive by looking at certain signs. For example, an organization that is serious about IT, that supports IT, would have a chief information officer or CIO. This is like an equivalent to vice president of technology. So that's a formal recognition that IT department is important, that IT is recognized and appreciated within the company. Also, within your own organization, you can grow appreciation of IT by assigning non-IT people to IT projects. Because sometimes people who are not from, who don't have technical or IT backgrounds, they don't understand IT in a sense that they don't appreciate how much work IT people put in just for you to have your email delivered to you every day, right? They don't appreciate that. And once you get them on board, they develop better appreciation, and from being skeptics and from from that position of not thinking much about IT, they become involved and they understand how important IT is and how complex certain IT technologies and processes are. So they become supporters. Instead of being your enemies, they become your supporters. So that's a way to increase awareness of people within the organization about IT and also get them on board, meaning get them to participate in the IT projects and get them to support your projects as opposed to being skeptics or openly sabotaging your IT projects. Okay, so this completes part 2 of chapter 2. Thank you for listening.